All right, and the very first topic we're going to be getting into is the Chicago Bears getting absolutely destroyed by the Green Bay Packers on Sunday Night Football. I know for any of our listeners who are probably in high school, I'm not sure how many we have, but I'm sure there are some. You got to watch that right before you went back to school on Monday after your Thanksgiving break, so I apologize to you guys. But yeah, that was a terrible loss, and not many positive takeaways that you can take from it. Reese, why don't you go ahead and start off? Give us some of your takeaways.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, as a Michigan fan, I know about that feeling of coming back from Thanksgiving break rather disappointed, because usually that'd be the weekend where they would lose to Ohio State pretty routinely, and you get to come back to school, and everyone that knows you're a Michigan fan like you would give me some good stick for it. So definitely, I know whatever Packers fans and Bears fans in school that probably wasn't the fun. Well, it was fun for the Packers fans, and that's all who was fun for. Watching the game too. I mean, it was very brutal. We saw a lot of the same mistakes, but new ones on the defense, because the defense got handled pretty badly in that game. Rodgers took them to task, and the offense just, once again, not good enough. Maybe they look a little bit more lively with Mitch back there, compared to Nick Foles, who I think that Barstool Big Cat said looks like a corpse in the pocket, which, I mean, he kind of does. He doesn't really move at all. But I think that, Mitch moving around made things look a little bit better, but I've seen quite a few decent breakdowns of, some passes that Mitch Trubisky missed on. It's inexcusable for someone, who's had 3 years of experience and just got benched. You think that would, be a little more sound, but not quite.
Mm-hmm. Well, the one thing that I want to state on the defense is, yeah, they looked pretty bad. To be fair, though, they are very, very tired. I'm sure they've been playing way more snaps offensively throughout the entire season than the offense has. I'm not going to blame it all on that. Another thing that I want to mention is that we don't have a single starter on our front three of our defensive line anymore. Eddie Goldman, Roy Robertson, Harris, and Akeem Hicks were out that game. So that's going to do a lot on your pass rush. I mean, with Robert Quinn having the disappointing year that he's been having, you're pretty much leaving it all up to Khalil Mack to create any sort of pressure. And I think that's what we saw on Sunday night. We saw Khalil Mack absolutely dominating every single snap, and even though he wasn't the most productive, and we saw that because all the focus was just completely on him, he was a little bit handicapped. Not to mention he was being held on every damn play. And the thing that really bothered me as well is there were a lot of errors on the officiating from the Packers side. Like Mitch getting face masked twice in the matter on one play, and then fumbling the ball and nothing being called there, whereas I think it was Bilal Nichols just barely got Rodgers' helmet while he was pushing him down, and that was a roughing the passer. Like you just can't make that up. It's hard because it feels like week after week we've had to really not only battle ourselves, because this Bears offense is not good, but also battle really terrible officiating.
And I think the league has been experiencing that as a whole. I think that there's certain teams that sometimes maybe do get a bit of a favorable bias towards them. I think the Packers can be that team. And
Absolutely.
It seems...
No, they are that team. Year after year. No, real quick, year after year, this is the most insane stat you could possibly pull from. If you look year after year as to yards benefited from like penalty calls, the Packers are always so far ahead of anybody else, and it's insane. It's like, what the hell is going on there?
Yeah, I guess there's probably, you could read into that with maybe their types of play calls if you want to try and make a legitimate excuse. I do think...
Is the NFL biased? Likely.
I think that, sometimes that can happen in an officiating, and I think that, if there was a team that was really going to benefit from it, it might be the Packers. But I think that, it definitely did play a part in the game, and sometimes penalties can have a huge influence on the flow of a game, so you really can't understate that, and the refs can actually make an impact. So I don't want to understate that. I don't want to say that you're wrong, Austin. I just know that, when you watch a team lose in that way, it's hard to really kind of just blame it on the penalties. I'm not saying that's what you're doing.
Oh, it's not.
But
yeah.
it's just tough because it just adds on. It's kind of the icing on the cake. Like everything's going so bad, it's hard enough to find offensive rhythm or for the defense to get off the field. And when a drive gets extended by a penalty, that really hurts the Bears. And when drives get slowed down, this is a Bears team that cannot afford to be second in anything more than like 8. Like they need to be constantly ahead of the chains. Once they take a penalty, it usually pretty much kills the drive right there. So, certainly the amount of penalties the Bears have picked up this year have been tremendous, and it has hurt them. I mean, it has hurt them all over. And I think that boils down ultimately to coaching. When you're routinely taking penalties, I mean, that just has to be something that needs to be coached out. And another thing is, I think maybe this was the first game where Chuck Pagano, I know he was taking a good amount of heat. I think that for the most part, he's been doing a good job this season. But some of his tactical decisions, like, rushing 3 in the red zone there, it was a little bit questionable. And, given that, yes, like you said, the Bears were missing their 3 starters now, or what we would anticipate before the season to be the 3 starters on the defensive line, and you only bring 3, like, obviously you're going to need the added help. It just doesn't quite make sense. And yeah, we saw how much this Bears team missed Akeem Hicks. I think that was glaring. I mean, how much of a hole that he plugged there. And Khalil Mack, I think he was definitely, going for it. And of course, you can never question his effort. It's just at times it's tough when he can get focused out, and his impact can be minimized when there's no one else to kind of take that pressure off of him. And Robert Quinn has been such a disappointment because, if anything, he was still out there playing. He should have been the man to do that. And, of course, like all season, he wasn't there.
The funny thing is when you look at the Chicago Bears, I mean, it's clear. Sure, the defense deserves some, flack this game. And I do not think that they are dissolved of any sort of issue, right? But the thing that I think is so hilarious is that we saw a couple of our offensive players come to, for instance, Allen Robinson was liking stuff about leaving the Bears, and Anthony Miller liked come to New England, bro, from some fan or whatever, implying that they're frustrated with the Bears. I'm like, bro, you're the one on offense. It's your fault. You're a big part of the issue. You can't just for Anthony Miller in particular. I'm a big Anthony Miller fan. I was really happy when we drafted him. I liked him in the draft process and everything. I wanted the Bears to draft him. But when you look at what he's done, I mean, he's been dropping balls left and right, especially in key moments. So he's a good player, and yes, we need to get a quarterback. But at the end of the day, it's like, bro, you're part of the issue. Same with Allen Robinson. He dropped an end zone pass. Sure, Allen Robinson can think he's worth that $20 million contract or whatever he thinks, but this Bears team should not be giving Allen Robinson $20 million. And that is just the reality of this situation. Is Allen Robinson is absolutely a replaceable talent. Okay? There are plenty of rookies in this league that have came in and made big enough impacts this season as Allen Robinson is making for the Chicago Bears and last season. Okay? There aren't always going to be DK Metcalfs in the draft, but I mean, you look at some of these other guys like Justin Jefferson, who's been insane for the Minnesota Vikings. He was a first-round pick. Or you look at just like A.J. Brown, for instance. He was, a third-round pick,
honestly, there's
pick?
so many more receivers in the league with a lot more talent. And this has been a rough year for Allen Robinson because he come out and made the statements. And he's still been putting up good numbers, but I think what Allen Robinson has done is showing you how unexceptional he is. When the 50-50 ball is up there, that you're not very certain that he's going to get it. When you need a big play, I don't really think the ball is going to go to Allen Robinson. I think the ball is going to go to Mooney. There's nothing really exceptional about Allen Robinson. He runs routes really well, has somewhat sure hands, and that's his claim to fame. And like you said, A.J. Brown, I would definitely take over. I think there's quite a few teams in the league where I could just kind of pour over some of the receivers and go like,
he's a second year.
And this guy's got, a lot more talent, a lot more upside.
Yeah, and the issue with Allen Robinson stems from Bears fans never seeing us have a receiver. Okay. We haven't really had many good receivers. In between, we had, Cam Meredith. His 1 year was the biggest thing in Chicago Bears history for us, is he had a huge year when he was undrafted or whatever. And then before that, Brandon Marshall, who was a stud, right? But outside of that, I mean, we haven't had a whole bunch of good receivers. And I think Allen Robinson is a good receiver. I would say he's probably 10 to 15 range. What I have to say, though, is that if you want to look at an elite receiver, look on the opposite side of the field in last week's game, look at Davante Adams. Now, Davante Adams is someone who deserves a $20 million contract because whenever his team needs him, he gets the ball. Okay, whenever the team needs him, he gets open. Whenever there's a 50-50 ball in the air or a tough catch, he gets the catch. Okay, and sure, you can say, oh, he's playing with Aaron Rodgers. Okay. Allen Robinson is playing with Nick Foles, and it's not the quarterback that's the issue. It's when he gets the opportunity. Whenever he doesn't, we're not looking at his overall stat line. Okay, that's not. If we were just saying, oh, Allen Robinson has less yards than Davante Adams, then you can bring in the quarterback argument and say, oh, well, Allen Robinson has played with Nick Foles, Mitch Trubisky, Blake Bortles, whatever, right? But we're not making that argument. We're saying when he gets the opportunities, he doesn't come down with the ball. When the ball is in the air, in the same way that Davante Adams catches the ball, Allen Robinson sometimes lets up an interception, whereas Davante Adams gets the ball and he scores. So I don't want to be this huge, like, oh my God, look at Justin Jefferson, Davante Adams, look at the teams in our divisions, these receivers. But at the end of the day, are we really going to be paying a receiver who might in a year be the third best receiver in our division alone?
I would say fourth, because honestly, I think even Kenny Golladay has more upside. And he's someone that actually has
he's a good player.
More game-breaking potential. I mean, he goes up there, he makes difficult catches. I think that he's not a perfect player, but I mean, he's someone, there's arguments that can be made. And what did we say at the beginning of the season? The comparable that what Allen Robinson was asking for was around Keenan Allen's contract. And if you look at what, so Keenan Allen got paid, and he's been there a lot more for Herbert this year than Robinson has been for any of the quarterbacks. I mean, you want to talk about making opportunities. I mean, it's just a matter of going up there and getting it and making the play, and I just feel that Allen Robinson hasn't done it. It's a matter of impact, and I think that while he's been there to pick up receiving yards, he hasn't been there when, when they need an impact play, when you need something to turn around. Because sometimes, sometimes things aren't clicking for every offense. Not every offense is like Kansas City where things seem to go so smoothly all the time. Sometimes it's a good catch, a play that kind of happens against the run of play that is needed for a spark, and Allen Robinson hasn't been that.
Hey guys, like our video, subscribe, and check out our bi-weekly podcasts on Apple Podcasts. Thanks.